The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to the AG5 webinar titled Learn How to Protect Your Business from Cyber Attacks. We have a special industry expert today, David Stelzl, and my name is Anupam Sahai. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of AG5. AG5 is a company that provides a comprehensive security, risk, and compliance management solution. So this is of great interest to us from a company and hopefully of interest to you as well. So regarding David's background, David has been a strategic advisor, is a strategic advisor, consultant, coach, and is a frequent speaker at multiple conferences. He has been in the reseller business for about 30 years and has been involved in security and cloud for that period of time. He's written multiple books, and some of them, The House in the Cloud, and other books that he will talk about. And his focus has been in security, sales, and marketing strategy. We are very honored to have David Stelzl here. Welcome, David, to the webinar.
Thank you, Anupam.
So from an agenda perspective, we will have Dave talk about some of the trends that he sees in the industry. What are the key security trends that we need to know about? And how should businesses tackle and deal with these new technologies that are adding to the complexity, as it were, whether it's cloud, bring your own device, and the social businesses that while facilitating collaboration and sharing is also causing some trouble from a security attack perspective. And then he'll talk about businesses, what mistakes do businesses make, and how to make your security program robust. And that will be about 30 to 35 minutes. And then I'll spend about 10 to 15 minutes talking about AG5 and how AG5 can help you with solving your cybersecurity attack problem, cybersecurity threat problem, and then how we are working together with David Stelzl to address the issues for companies like yourself. We will have Q&A at the end, and please type in your questions in the question section of the webinar. We will pick up your questions near the end of after the presentation. A recording of the webinar will also be made available in the next few days. Give us 2 to 3 business days to get the recording uploaded and sent across to everybody. With that, let's begin. So first, I want to show you a chart to explain the extent of the problem, and David will talk further about this. And this is a chart that's a real-time display of all the breaches that have happened. And if you look at the size of the bubble indicates the extent or the number of records that were breached. And as you can see here, the frequency of these bubbles occurring has gone up over a period of time. If you look over the trend lines back in 2000, 2006, 2007, the number of bubbles that are shown here are very few. But as we get to the current timeline, the frequency of the bubbles and the size of the bubbles are going up. And that's really the explanation and the problem that we are all faced with, wherein cyber attackers are very sophisticated. They've become very organized, and they are stealing data at will. And businesses literally take, while it takes seconds and minutes for attackers to break in and steal the data, businesses take weeks and months to discover that a breach has happened and deal with the losses that follow after, whether it's brand damage, whether it's loss of intellectual property. The losses can be irreparable. So what we want to do today is to talk about some of these trends and the challenges that we face as an industry and how we can address it. So with that, let me hand it over to David to take us through his thoughts and presentation. David?
Okay, let me get my slides up here.
Yep, we see your slides.
Okay, and we're in full screen mode, so you should be able to see that, right?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to turn on my video camera here just also so that you can see me. Okay, good. Well, I'm going to spend just a few minutes here this afternoon to go through some security trends, and I don't intend this to be a very technical conversation because I feel like the security issues have been always presented in too technical of a fashion. I really want to go through three things. One is what's happening out there. What are the trends that we ought to be watching for over the next, say, 12 to 18 months? This is a bit of an update, perhaps, on some of the news items and that sort of thing. But what hackers are doing and where data is really being stolen. And then in the middle of my presentation, I'd like to spend a few minutes on what I think is probably the big issue, the thing that 90% of the companies that I talk with are making, and why data really is being exposed. And then the last section of my presentation, I'd like to talk about some of the mindsets that need to be built into the people who are creating and using information. So we'll start out with some trends here, kind of just to get things going. Interesting article in the Wall Street Journal. Actually, the last couple of days, there were two articles that talked about Google's approach to security changing. So you might have seen that. We'll touch a little bit on that as we go through where they are, moving the perimeter to really the end user and thinking of the network as something that is open, kind of getting away from the traditional perimeter thinking. And so it's not a new thought, by the way. If you've been in security any length of time, people have talked about this for years, perhaps the last 10 or 15 years, really. But no one's actually really gone that direction. But I want to start out with just some news things to get us thinking about what's going on out there. First of all, you may have heard this term digitization megatrend. I know Forbes has written quite extensively about it, Harvard Business Review. We've seen it in the Wall Street Journal. And what they're talking about really is the millennial generation, which, of course, now is the majority workforce out there today, which is a group of people who have grown up, more in a connected world. I don't want to say more technically savvy necessarily. In fact, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal today about the fact that they're not necessarily more technical, but they are used to living in a technical connected world. And so we're talking about what Wall Street Journal called a notoriously promiscuous group of people because they're used to their data being online. So if you can remember, depending on how old you are, but I certainly remember when the internet was first becoming big, it was scary, to put a blog post out there with your name on it, to put something where everyone could see it. Nobody would do that. Or to put a picture of yourself or your family online was just something that you wouldn't necessarily do. And this is changing. In fact, the idea now is that our data is out there. It probably is in the hands of other people, and this group of people is not necessarily that concerned about it. And I don't know if all that's true, but that's what the Wall Street Journal is saying. I'm sorry, I'm clicking on here. The other thing that's interesting is as we reflect back on events like the 9/11 disaster and other major issues that are more physical in nature, attacks and that sort of thing, terrorist-type activity, the nation's most senior analysts out there that are looking at these things are really more concerned today about cyber attacks than they are the physical attacks. The power behind these is much greater. And if you look at what is possible now, in fact, just a couple of weeks ago, the RSA convention took place in California, and there was a guy who was kicked off of one of the United Airline flights because he tweeted that he could hack into the computer systems inside the airplane that he was sitting in. So they took him off the plane. Somebody picked it up as a tweet and escorted him off the plane, and he is not allowed to fly U.S. Air anymore. But the point is that pretty much everything really is connected. Our dams, our water treatment plants, our power grids. If you look at China's most recent developments in their fighter jets, they look a lot like our F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. And why is that? Well, you may have read in the paper a couple of years ago that we sensed that they were stealing that data. The data was stolen. We of course blamed China for doing that. Everything's connected, and even if we boil that down into little things like cars and elevators and door locks, even pacemakers have been hacked into, the power of software and the ability to compromise software. Everything is controlled by software, and so when people can get in there and start to manipulate things, it can create disasters for us. And this is kind of the world we live in today. Everything is connected, and it's kind of a war. That the problem is that there's not the attention-grabbing explosions, the body bags, the gore coming back from some other country, and so it's difficult to know how to respond. When you look at a company like Sony being attacked, and of course they blamed it on North Korea. We don't really know if that's true or not. I suspect perhaps that's not really who did it, but who knows? Nobody really knows. The point is, who responds to that? Can the government jump in there and claim or be sure that that was actually an attack, and can they strike back? And how do they strike back? And it's complicated. And even if there is a response, that response often is in more compliance, more expensive compliance laws, more HIPAA, more GLBA, more PCI, more Sarbanes-Oxley. And of course, the brand reputation and the recovery of a company like Sony is not part of that equation. And so what does a company like that do? I suppose they might have cyber insurance, but how do you get your brand name back? Very difficult to do. And so today, some of the things that I want to go through are really to wake us up, to get us thinking about what needs to be done to stop some of the cybercrime. Now, I'll tell you up front, I don't have nearly enough time to address this topic, but I'm going to try to give you a broad brush view as much as I can in these three areas. So let's look at some of the things that are happening out there. I want to start out by showing you what it is you really need to know, and of course, I'm sure there are people online here today which are from a very technical role all the way up to a management role. But this is what, regardless of where you are, this is what your board of directors needs to know. It's what your CISO needs to know, and it's what your CIO needs to know. So whatever your role is, whether you're in one of those roles or you're in a more technical role, this is the data that needs to be coming up, and it's the impact likelihood graph, a very simple view of risk. How do we measure the risk in an organization? Now, I want to quickly share with you a quick story about what this graph really is saying. In fact, I want to give you a quick illustration here from my own life, just as a picture of how this works. If you look at how people view security today, a lot of talk about impact. What happens if this server goes down? What happens if this data gets compromised, or we get hacked, or whatever it is, right? It's all impact related. Now, I was a couple of years, actually it's about 2 years ago now, I was not feeling well, and in fact I had some symptoms that I was really quite alarmed about. And it was Christmas Day, and I was here celebrating here with my family, and of course we were, eating all the stuff you're not supposed to eat and enjoying our time, but I just wasn't feeling well. And that night I went to bed, and I remember laying in bed, and my wife went to sleep, and I'm wondering, what is this? And I didn't sleep all night. I was kind of tossing around all night. In the morning, I got up early, like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, because I just gave up, And I went in to visit my health advisor, which of course is Google, right? Haven't we all turned to Google for our health advisement now? So I'm sitting in front of Google in my office, and I'm looking up the symptoms of a heart attack. And I'm looking for, blog posts. I'm looking for articles from doctors. I'm looking for something to tell me what that feels like, because I don't want to alarm everybody if there's not a real issue here. But I was wondering, am I about to have a heart attack? And I came across this blog post that had the 10 symptoms, and as I went down the symptoms, they all seemed to line up with me. And so the last one, though, was the clincher. Actually, my wife is in the healthcare world, and so she is up on all these things. And when you have someone in healthcare in your family, you don't want to tell them if you're having a major health issue, because all kinds of things all of a sudden have to happen. There's all kinds of action that takes place, and it's kind of embarrassing, especially if it's not real, And so I went and I told her, because the last bullet point said, make sure you tell someone, because it could be stopped if you would let somebody know. So I went and I told her this, and of course she was immediately alarmed and rushed me out to the car, rushed me to the hospital, told the kids to bring a suitcase. You'll probably be over there overnight probably. And when I got there, they started, doing all these tests. And they're looking for evidences of, have you had a heart attack? Are you about to have one? All the different things that might be true, high cholesterol, high triglycerides, and so forth, blood pressure, and to see, is this person in trouble? Now, we all understand what the impact of a heart attack is, and as I was going through the morning, they're bringing back the test results, and luckily I hadn't had a heart attack, and they weren't sure I was about to have one either, but my cholesterol was high, my triglycerides were high, and they wanted to monitor me overnight. In fact, they wanted me to do a stress test in the morning, and but by lunchtime, a lot of the evidence had come back that looked pretty good, except for those numbers. And so I'm feeling better now because the test results look good. And so at some point, the nurse comes in and says, well, Mr. Stelzl, we need to take you over to the other hospital because we don't have room for you here. You can't stay overnight here. And so we're going to monitor you overnight. So the ambulance is on its way. Well, at that point, I'm feeling pretty good. And I turned to my wife, and of course, she really wants me to do this because if there is any issue, she wants to know. And I just said to her, does our insurance cover the ambulance ride? So she said, well, I don't know. So she went and checked and came back, and she said, if it were an emergency, if we had been at home having a heart attack and called, it would be covered. But because it's just a transport, it's not an emergency, it is not covered, and so it's $1,500 to do that ride. Now, it's a 15-minute ride from this facility to the facility I need to go to. 15 minutes, $1,500, okay? So I said to the nurse, I am not paying $1,500 to take a car ride down the street. My wife will drive me. To which she said, you can't do that, Mr. Stelzl. You're checked in here, you're under our care, and you have to take the ambulance. And I said, listen, if you want to pay for the ambulance, then I'll take it, but I'm not paying $1,500 to take a 15-minute car ride. At that point, she left the room, and then a couple minutes later, the doctor came in. Now, the doctor puts down her clipboard, and she says, Mr. Stelzl, the ambulance is on its way, and you have to take the ambulance ride. I said, listen, I am not paying $1,500. She said, but Mr. Stelzl, your family, your cholesterol, your triglycerides. And it was at that point that I realized this woman doesn't understand risk, and it's time to bring out the impact likelihood chart. So I brought this chart out, and I said, listen, everything you're telling me is true, but it's all impact. See, impact, impact, impact. What happens if this happens? What happens if that happens? But the only thing that really matters is what's the likelihood that it will happen. And if we understand the likelihood, we can make a decision. Now, this morning, the likelihood in my mind was way up here. It was at the 100% level almost. And I was thinking, I might be having a heart attack. I might actually die. But now that I'm looking at your test results, I have come way down that y-axis, and I'm feeling pretty good right now. And so I am not spending $1,500 to take a car ride over there. And you're going to have to convince me that I am way more in danger today than I was yesterday for me not to get into my car and head over there with my wife. Well, at that point, she gave up, left, got a bunch of papers, signed me out, washed her hands of me. I went to the other place, and everything was fine. But this is the key to security. Just like health, we need to understand the likelihood. And if we don't understand the likelihood, then we can't make wise decisions. And this is the piece that's missing. So in a nutshell, here's what your board needs to know. What are the high-impact things that are in your company? In other words, the key data, applications that your company makes money on. And what's the likelihood that they will be compromised? And when you understand that, then you know where to take action and where not to. You can separate hype from reality. Now, if you look at the person who is running the organization, let's say the CIO from an IT perspective, it used to be that this person was more operation-focused. Remember the DP manager mindset, the are we up? Is everything running? But on the other side of the business now, we have this growth equation. And not too long ago, the Wall Street Journal, actually they've written several articles about the need for CIOs and even CISOs to move into more of a business-type function where they're relating more to the board, more to the CEO, and they're thinking about growth. Every decision today is a technology decision. Every strategic initiative involves a technology change. On the operations side, we have employees, users, infrastructure, choosing products, all that sort of stuff that takes place. But what's really important is how do we build the brand? How do we build customer experience? How do we create sales for the organization? How do we compete with Amazon really is the problem. And while all that's happening, there's all these pressures, the cost and the compliance issues and the talent acquisition in the high-tech space the competition. You know, what's Amazon doing? What's Walmart doing? What's TJ Maxx doing? Or Target doing on the online? And of course, it could be any industry, right? I'm just using that as an example. It could be manufacturing. It could be medical. All these things play out, and then there's security issues. And meanwhile, the end users, which are now the perimeter, right, are in there trying to conduct business, and they're asking, how do I use cloud? You know, what apps can I use? What apps can help me do my business? What can I do with big data? How can I make faster decisions, better decisions? How about mobility? Can I do my job anywhere? Can I do it on my phone or my tablet, my own device? How do I use social business to interact with clients and with third-party processing or whatever partners that we use? And this completely changes the security equation out there. Now, it turns out that no matter how much money you spend, if you don't change your approach to security as all this is happening, the digitized megatrend, you will lose the battle. And so this is very important here. So very quickly, I want to go through some of the key trends here, the 7 trends very quickly. And what you'll find is that most of these are mindsets, but I want to start with a small foundation here of what it is that's being done out there. Okay, this is general. It's been around for a long time, but everybody should know what a bot is. You know, it's the software agent that is sent out on the internet through email, through movies, through music sharing, through just about any interaction we have online that plants itself on a computer and makes itself open, available to somebody outside the organization. That in conjunction with the emails that are being sent out through spam. You know, I still hear people talking about spam as an issue because of the disk space, the time it takes. None of that really matters. What really matters is people sending email that is enticing you to click on a link that installs a bot on a computer. That is the biggest way, the easiest way for a hacker to get inside your data. And of course, all that is undergirded with social engineering, the ability to deceive somebody into giving access, giving away their passwords, giving away their credentials, giving away their entire computer through an email link that seems harmless. You know, simple emails like there's a tax law change or thank you for your order, or and if you're technical, you might not click on those things. But if you're a business person, and that's where the perimeter sits today, you don't have time to think about this. Is this real or is it not? I mean, I'm in the legal department. I got a tax law change, so I'm going to look at it. I click on the link, and boom, there it is. I'm infected, but I don't know it. Now, here are the 7 concerns, right? The first one is that the malware being used today, those bots and other kinds of destructive programs, are amazingly powerful. If you don't understand the power of this, you should Google Stuxnet, S-T-U-X-N-E-T, Stuxnet. Stuxnet was an example of malware released on the internet to find one single system in the whole world. So here a hacker, or some hackers, and the rumor is that it was the United States and Israel actually collaborating on this, but who knows, was sent out on the internet to find one single computer. And when it landed on that computer, it was able to take over an entire uranium enrichment process and nuclear weaponry manufacturing and destroy it, physically destroy it, through one single agent. Well, at the same time, disguising all the things that were happening in that centrifuge process to make the operators think that everything was fine. Okay, they've shut down power grids, they've shut down manufacturing plants, they've compromised banks. Malware is powerful, it's unstoppable. Number 2 gets into some of the mindsets, and it's the BYOD trend. Okay, so everybody wants to use their own device. They've got their phone, they've got their tablet, and they want to compute on it. Now, I'm not against BYOD, although it is risky. It's going to happen. You can't stop it. If you're in the IT group, you may be trying to stop it, but if you've heard the term shadow IT, which means end users are becoming their own IT, it's real, it's going to happen. It's like instant messaging was years ago. It's like getting on the internet was in the mid-90s, and now it's BYOD. You won't be able to stop it. The problem is that there's a mindset building here, and the mindset is that all data is the same. And so now the thought, remember, data used to be in the data center, used to be protected. Well, it's not anymore. Where is your data? It's sitting on your phone, it's sitting on your tablet, it's in the air somewhere, and it is not secure. In many cases, it's in clear text sitting out in some unstructured format like email. Number 2 is closely related to that, and that is the social media craze. Of course, it's been around for a while. And there is some concern that people spend half their day on Facebook or doing something, social at work, and that's a problem, but it's not my problem. The problem I'm concerned about is that data is no longer sacred. And so people are now sending around pictures of themselves naked, all over the internet, even if they don't look good, if you know what I mean. And the problem here is that something that used to be very sacred is now just broadcasted on the internet indiscriminately. And if they'll do that with their own personal private things, what will they do with corporate data? They don't treat corporate data as though it's more secure than their own private lives. And so as you see people just putting everything about themselves on the internet, in social media, you got to believe the same thing is happening with data. In fact, there was a article in the Wall Street Journal not too long ago where a woman on Facebook was friending all these guys in a financial firm on Wall Street and convinced 73% of them to give away sensitive information to her. But get this, 13% of them gave away the passwords of the financial systems to this woman. 13%. That's more than a tenth of the people using these systems, and you only need one password. You don't need 10%. Now, it turned out this was a white hat hacker. It was a 40-year-old male, not a woman, who was pretending to be a 25-year-old woman, right? And so if he can get away with that, if he can do that, of course, he did it under contract to test the integrity of that company. But if you can't block that, how can you secure your data? Number 4 is a misunderstanding of what secures data. Passwords, encryption. You should write this down. Passwords do not work. Passwords are old. They don't work. And so to think that they do is problematic. Here's another one, number 5. Internal people steal data. 75%, according to a Wall Street Journal article, steal data from their own companies. How are you going to defend against that? And by the way, the other 25% are lying. When people spend time working in a company and pour their whole life into something, they take that data with them. At least most do. And how do you secure against that? And then we have these nation-state-sponsored attacks, a lot of them coming out of China, a lot of them coming out of Russia and other Eastern countries. What do they want? They want our intellectual capital. They want the innovation. And so how do we block that? There's power. These people understand what they're doing, and they are able to get our data. It's very important to know that. And then finally, we have the threat of cyber warfare, which is certainly real today. Nothing you can really do about it, but it's just good to be aware of it. And so I put it up there to let us understand the next wars will be fought here. But the problem is distinguishing what's a war and what's somebody just infiltrating your company. How does our government respond, and what do you do about it? These are the trends. Okay? These are the things that I'm looking at. These are the things you ought to be concerned about over the next 12 to 18 months. But let's look at the big issue. So very quickly, the real simple model. I want to show you something, before it's too late. It takes, by the way, an average of 14 months for a company to know that they've been under attack, to know somebody is in there stealing. And I want to show you what the root problem is. And by the way, it's not a technical problem. It's kind of a people problem. And I'm going to use a model of a home here, of your home. So think for a moment about your house and how you secure your home. Hopefully when you lay down to go to bed tonight, you'll feel secure, right? You'll be able to sleep at night. You'll be at peace, right? But what is it that makes a home secure? Now, if we were together in a room and I were to ask you that and we were to sort of brainstorm a little bit, we'd come up with a list, right? We'd say, well, I've got my windows are locked at night, my door is locked, I got an alarm system, maybe I'm connected to a service like Alarm Force or ADT, and, I've got a fence, maybe you have a dog, maybe you have personal firearms in the house, police, insurance. Basically, you'd have a list that looked like this. This is what we depend on to secure our home. And at nighttime, we go to sleep, hopefully we feel fairly confident that this works. But I want to share something with you and ask you to evaluate this when you get home tonight from work. These things do not secure your home, although you think they do. But there is something that does secure your home, and you can evaluate whether or not you have it. If you have all these things, you may have a sense of security, but you may not actually be secure. And here's what it is that secures your home. It's actually a system that uses these things, and if the system is built correctly, this will work. If the system's not correct, it will not work. It's a level of protection, detection, and response. 3 levels, and they work in order, and they are timed sequentially. Now, again, if we were together, what I'd like to ask you, and we can't really do this here online, but which one of these is most important? And actually, I'd like you to just take a moment and jot that down. It's a protection, detection, or response. Which column is most important? By the way, you need all three. Okay? I hope you wrote something down. When I do live conferences, I get a pretty big response on response. I get a medium response on detect, and I get a very high response on protect, about 90%. This is what we've been taught. This is right, but it's not right. What's really right is detection. Detection is the most important aspect of your security system. You've got doors in place and you have windows in place, but they're very easy to compromise. If you look at a bank right now in the daytime, the doors are open. The vault is open. What is it that protects the money? It's the ability to detect somebody violating some policy within the organization, the ability to go behind the counter, to go in the back room. And once that's violated, once it's detected, there's a response plan that goes into place that will hopefully stop that perpetrator. But this piece in the middle is the piece that keeps most people from going back there in the first place. They know they'll be detected. They know there's a response plan, even if the response plan is not well built. In your own home, it's easy to break in. It's not easy to get away without being seen unless nobody's home and there's no neighbors. But if you've got an alarm, if you're home, there's a high probability that they will be detected, and then, of course, you better have some response plan in place. If it's okay with you, if it takes the 20 minutes for the police to show up, that's fine. You can take that chance. But you need to make sure your response plan can react quick enough to stop that perpetrator. In the bank, this is timed. It needs to be timed in your home, too. This is how security works, but the problem is 80% of companies, according to Gartner Group, have spent their budget on security on column 1. And what that is firewalls, passwords, encryption. And it's not secure. People can break through this stuff quickly. And there is very little in place detection-wise, and so we end up with all these statistics about companies being compromised every single day. This is what security should look like. Protection, detection, response, just like the house, across administrative, technical, and physical things. When we build security like this, we have a strong security architecture. When we ask somebody who is responsible for firewalls to build the security architecture, it's the wrong place. It's a company responsibility to look over, the CISO, right? The person who looks over all security, physical and technical, and figures out how do we keep our assets safe, how do we detect when there is an issue, because there always will be, and is there a response plan in place that works fast enough? Now, the whole thing is predicated on detection, but I want to give you some mindsets that need to be built into your organization in order to make this work. First of all, most people, when they think about security, are thinking about technology. It's a technical mindset. This phone right here at Verizon is worth about $200. If I go to Apple, it's worth about $800. But the question is, what is the data value of this phone? Now, I don't know because it just depends on what data is on it. But in your company, you very well could have $1 million worth of data sitting on a device that's this big or on a thumb drive. And it might be tempting for IT to think, well, it's just a DVD, it's worth $1, or it's just a phone, or it's just a laptop, it's worth $100 or $1,000. But the truth is it may have millions of dollars worth of data and brand reputation stored on it. An asset mindset is critical to detecting data. Secondly, we have to be thinking PDr. Detection is the most important. I can't keep them out. They're probably already in, and so how do we detect them quickly, faster than 14 months? Number 3 is I need to be restrictive about who can access what. It turns out in most companies that the higher up you get up in the organization, the more you think you should have access to. And that is not true. In fact, there needs to be divisions between people. It's just like the accounting department, only worse, right? You don't want somebody in the accounting department to be the auditor and also do the accounting and also be able to write and sign checks. If that one person can do all that stuff, it's going to be a real big problem because there's too much temptation there. I can't tell you how many businesses I've worked with where I told them to put key logging software on their accountant systems internally, which is not popular, by the way. And you know what? They've discovered theft going on. Then there's a digital. We have the asset mindset, but there's also a digital mindset, and this involves understanding that everything we are doing today creates data. this webinar, me talking, leaving a voicemail, writing an email, writing a Word document, doing just about anything today, buying something in the store, driving a car, creates data. And if we don't understand that, we don't know what kind of tracks we're leaving, we don't know what kind of data we're leaving around, and we don't realize that people are collecting our data, piecing it together, and building profiles of us in a way that allows them to steal our whole identity. And when they've got your identity, they can get your whole company. Because all I need to do is be somebody at your company, at least digitally, and I can access everything, at least everything that person has access to. And using social engineering, I can infiltrate your entire company. The digital mindset today is critical. One of the most important ones, and I wish I could go into more detail on this, is disposal. It is hard to delete data. It's hard to get rid of your tracks. And you might think you're getting rid of them, but you're not. You're just changing the pointers. The data still exists in most cases. Very hard to get rid of. And then there's thinking holistically. Remember, protection, detection, response, the whole model works together. It's all timed, it's all sequential, and if it's not, it doesn't work. Then there's the interrogating, another one that is very unpopular today. Nobody wants to be interrogated. Nobody wants to be looked at and watched. In fact, in my own home, I have keylogger software on all my computers. I've told my family, this is my airspace. If you're connected to my internet, then I own the data. And if you send an email, if you chat, if you text, if you tweet, I can read it. I can read anything. I can get to anybody's files. And you know what? In the company, the people who are responsible for security and the people who are overseeing that company, it is the company's data. And people should be, systems should be constantly interrogated for people who are in there doing the wrong thing with the data. Everybody needs accountability, digital accountability. I'm not talking about Big Brother. I'm not talking about spying on people, like we're reading about. I'm really talking about companies protecting their data. And that only happens as we constantly interrogate. In other words, we constantly assess, security assess. Constant needs to be happening constantly. And the last one is to be poised, and I'll end with this one. Being poised means that I expect to be compromised. In fact, I expect I have been compromised. And I will never say, we've got it covered. When I hear an IT person or a technology person or even a business person say, we've got it covered, I think how wrong it is to think that. If you look at how long it took these companies like JP Morgan and Target and Home Depot and just in the last year to discover that they had been attacked, it took months. And they actually found out in a shorter period of time than most do. Usually it's 14 months. It took TJ Maxx, if you remember back in 2000, I guess that would have been 2004, 2005 time frame. It took them 3 years. And hundreds of millions of credit cards have been stolen because people just thought, I've got it covered. But it's not just credit card numbers. It's healthcare data. It's all kinds of stuff. I want to end with a quick story that illustrates the idea of being poised, and then I'll turn it back over to Anupam. When I was younger, I used to be a lifeguard. And I was working in a camp. I was at a pool. I pulled out people out of the pool who were drowning. In fact, my big job was teaching lifeguarding to other people. And so people would come to the camp. I'd certify them as a lifeguard, and they'd sign their cards and so forth. Well, one day at the end of the camp season, my director asked me to take everyone to the ocean for a swim time. And I had never lifeguarded on the ocean before. It's up on Long Island. And so we got there early in the morning before the crowds, and I had everybody out there buddied up, trying to be secure, right? And I'm on the beach, have my whistle in hand, and I'm watching everybody. And all of a sudden, there's this girl that is pretty far out. In fact, she's overhead. She's up in these big waves, and she's yelling for me, and she's in trouble. And I look out there, and I notice this is the girl. She's a junior counselor who I have certified in lifeguarding, and she's not strong enough to swim in. She can swim, but she can't get in against the riptide. And so I started calling to her, try to come in and, try to ride the riptide around. And as I'm looking out there, she's in trouble. But I'm looking at these waves and I'm going, there's no way that I can swim out there with all these waves and get her and get back in. I'm not going to make it. And so as I stood there and she drifted off to sea, I thought, she's going to die. And all of a sudden, this big guy ran by me. He dove in the water. This really happened. He swam out, he grabbed her, and he pulled her back in. Now, he had this big orange torpedo with him. He was an ocean lifeguard. He had the equipment he needed with him, and he had just shown up on site, and he saw her out there. He saved her. He didn't say anything to me. But as I looked around me, I realized I showed up today with a whistle to lifeguard at an ocean. And I'm used to lifeguarding at a pool with a shepherd's crook and my little ring toss thing, and it's always been pretty easy. But here I am on the beach, assuming that because I've got swimmers in front of me that everyone's okay. And I felt like I had it covered, but boy, was I wrong. And I almost lost somebody. So as I close here, what I really want you to do is take a look back at your architecture. Are we depending on protection to save us? Or do we truly have a detection program in place that is constantly assessing so that we can kick in a response plan, because it will happen if it hadn't already? So Anupam, let me turn it back over to you. Hope this was helpful.
Thank you, David. That was very informational. Yeah, so like you said, it's very important to have the right perspective, look at the right problem, and solve the right problem, and have the right tools to address and deal with the cybersecurity threat problem. So what I want to do over the next 10 minutes or so is to take you through some automation tools that are out there that can look at security in a holistic, comprehensive manner, and look at the combination of protect, detect, and respond cycle, as it were, to create and maintain a robust security program. So the question that comes about is that given the background and the requirements from a security program perspective, if we assume that there are lots of security technologies out there, things are still being broken in, and what's the reason for that? Part of the reason is that the complete comprehensive framework of protect, detect, and respond is not really being looked at. The solutions programs are looking at pieces of the whole complete solution. There are governance issues, people management and governance issues. You can have the best technology, but if you don't have the right champion at the top, or policies to drive and guide the implementation, no technology can solve the problem on its own. And there are a number of solutions that are fragmented. They look at the solution from a narrow perspective, and we'll talk about that. And the irony of the situation is that 97% of the attacks that took place in 2014, and even before that, the numbers could be higher, were easily preventable using very simple security controls if there were to be a combination of protect, detect, and respond technologies to take timely action to deal with it. The siloed, I want to spend a few minutes on the siloed approach that it's out there from a current application or solution perspective. So there are solutions that do bits and pieces of protect, detect, and respond, and there are multiple application silos. There are a number of compliance management platforms. There are solutions that do vulnerability analysis and penetration testing, log and SIM, but they're only looking at bits and pieces of the complete comprehensive requirements for a robust security program. While they solve part of it, they're expensive to maintain, and really the result and the burden of proof and analysis is left to the IT admin or the chief security officer. So it's that's part of the problem why we have this problem. Now, when we designed AG5, one of the objectives was to provide a complete, comprehensive security risk and compliance assurance solution. And it does support the complete protect, detect, and respond cycle that I'll talk about. And it has complete built-in support for security frameworks, compliance frameworks, security scanning, risk management. So one application does it all in terms of meeting the needs for assessments, scanning, remediation, and monitoring in an ongoing fashion. Because security and compliance is a journey, and we are able to not only enable using AG5 one-time assessment, but continuous monitoring to make sure that the protect, detect, respond cycle is continuously looked at from an evaluation and remediation perspective. And this is a solution that's delivered through the cloud, and it has complete support for all these different mechanisms that make it into a robust solution. The solution has been reviewed and has been rated at the highest 5-star rating. We've won a number of awards for the solution. And this is really what we are automating in the solution, where we are creating a framework for protect, detect, and respond, as I said earlier, where you do an initial assessment, fix all the problems that are found, and then continuously monitor using a dashboard and using reports and alerts and notifications. And the tool is enabling you to stay on top of any changes that might be happening, either because of external factors, there could be internal changes in terms of device or threats, whatever be it. The system will be able to continuously monitor any changes that happen, and you're able to generate reports that give you the latest status based on the current state of affairs. So going back to this protect, detect, and respond cycle, the solution, AG5 solution, has the ability to integrate and unify all the different requirements coming from dealing and implementing a complete security framework. And we are able to have native support for most of these components, but we are also able to integrate and interoperate with third-party solutions, so that there's integration achieved by an expert system that AG5 has built in, and you get a single unified dashboard that gives you one place to look at all issues related to security. So it addresses the siloed fragmentation problem, and also deals with the confusion that might exist today, where multiple piecemeal solutions exist. I won't spend too much time on this, but suffice it to say that security and compliance, while related, are not the same. You can be compliant and not secure, and vice versa too. Think of compliance as really a part of the security problem, where you're looking at critical assets that the regulation or the standard is trying to protect. So HIPAA protects PHI information, PCI protects credit card information, etc. So compliance is a security program designed to protect a certain critical asset only. But from a security perspective, we need to look at all critical assets that are pertinent and relevant for an organization, to secure them, to protect, detect, and respond to any changes or threats that might be affecting them. So the solution that we have is one application that does it all. It integrates all the protect, detect, and secure and respond mechanisms, deals with physical and technical and policy issues. All of that is integrated, and it's all deployable through the cloud. I want to show you a few slides of how the solution looks and feels, and if you're interested in playing around with this, let us know. You can also download a community edition. That's a free edition that will give you a glimpse of what it can do. But basically, the dashboard will show you a quick status of your security and in this case, compliance posture. You're able to look at this in real time. It supports the complete risk management model. So whether it's NIST or ISO or Octave, whatever be the risk management model that your organization is implementing, the tool will support that. It will automate all the elements to make it very, very simple to do the initial assessment and repeat it. There's a dashboard that allows you to do sensitivity analysis. You can look at all the factors that contribute towards your organization risk, and look at various control knobs that you can use to minimize risk exposure. So let me end by saying that clearly, hopefully, and you agree, hopefully, that the cyber attack scenario is a huge threat, and it's growing by the day. In fact, year over year, starting 2010 onwards, the number of attacks have grown 100% CAGR, compounded annual growth, year over year. And so it continues to be a huge problem. It's morphing into something bigger, where it's being sponsored by nations, by companies to do espionage, to steal intellectual property. and we need to find a solution that integrates all the security program and robust security program concerns, or like protect, detect, and respond based approach to solving the problem. Clearly, there's a need to do risk analysis to make sure that you are able to assess the potential exposure. So a risk analysis will help you understand where you stand today as an organization. And then there's a need to continuously work to enhance your security posture so that your risk exposure is minimized. And AG5 can help organizations to automate all of their security risk and compliance assurance needs and provide a comprehensive framework to look at solving and addressing the problem. Again, if you want to look at and download a community edition, please feel free to do so from ag5.com/community, or just reach out to us at ag5.com if you have any further questions. So with that, let me open it up for Q&A and see whether you have any questions so far. Okay, so there is a question, David, perhaps for you. So using cloud, and what's your opinion on people using the cloud, and how secure or unsecure does that how does it affect the security posture? Can you spend some time on that, please? David, are you there? I think you might be muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hello?
Go ahead. Yeah, we
okay,
can hear
good.
you now.
Yeah, so there's a lot of debate about that, right? Should people use the cloud? And of course, I think what we're talking about are hosted applications, or even Dropbox and other apps on your phone. All of that is cloud. The thing I would bear in mind is that companies or people in the companies are going to use cloud. So it's almost not a valid question, because you can't really stop it. The question is, can you secure it? And Gartner actually did a nice job in an article recently where they talked about the fact that actually most companies, and of course, most companies are going to be smaller than the huge companies, are probably less secure than mainline cloud providers. So when you put data in the cloud, what you want to make sure of is, are you putting it in a cloud that is reputable, not some fly-by-night sort of cloud solution, but something that has a brand that's going to be around for a while, that is spending millions of dollars on securing their data and has a lot to lose if they do lose it. Chances are they're more secure than the average person is. The other thing I'll mention is that there are certainly tools coming out now, cloud broker type technology that allows companies to monitor who's using the cloud, what they're using it for, and to actually control what goes in and out of cloud, like Dropbox type stuff. So it's another level of detection, actually, which is, of course, what this is all about. The more we can detect what's happening, the more secure we can be. So I don't know if that completely answers the question, but it gives us, some direction. Oh, one more thing. I'm going to put in the chat box here this site, stelzlsecurity.com. There's actually a report. There's a little video there, but right next to it on the right is a report that I wrote that actually talks about this issue, people moving to the cloud, what you need to consider as you try to build your security program.
Okay, so a follow-up question to that is that what should companies look out for when they're talking about security programs, and any thoughts and advice there?
Well, that's pretty broad. Look out for. Perhaps what you're meaning is when they're doing risk assessments, or when they're looking at their security architecture, what needs to be considered. I think most companies are depending on scans for a lot of their assessment work. In fact, a lot of the compliance stuff out there calls for regular scans and everything. The problem is the data needs to be interpreted. You need to have intelligence. So to just have your IT company running some scans here and there is not enough. It actually is the reporting and understanding the data and everything behind that is critical. Because what you're looking for is intelligence, predictive analysis. Mike McConnell, former advisor to the White House on security, would say. So as you look at, like, for instance, the Agify technology, a lot's been put into the reporting process so that you can analyze the data and and look at it. So I would say identifying the assets, then using the technology to understand the issues, and then looking at the intelligence to figure out what's our likelihood. And that is the end results of any analysis. What is the likelihood based on what we're doing today? And if you can answer that question, then you know what technologies need to be put in place, what policies and oversight and so forth that needs to be put in place to make sure that you do have security in your company.
Okay, thank you, David. I think we are running out of time now. So if you have any, we'll try to respond to the other questions that are queued up. And if you have any further questions, please drop a note to sales@agify.com, and we will be able to address it via email. So thank you all again for coming. We appreciate your time. And we will have a copy of the webinar recording available, and we'll send you an email with the information. And look forward to seeing you in future webinars from Agify. Thank you again. Have a great day.